Mr. Alderman?
Here.
Mr. Sims?
Here.
And Ms. Angel? Oh, here. You have everybody here?
All right, I'm going to jump out of order here real quick. The first thing I'm going to take is 07-11-20, request for consideration of a temporary structure at Trinity United Methodist Church on December 5th and 6th. And I believe also, well, no, there's a rain date. And this is from Ms. Andrus and Mr. Gwaltney and myself. And Susan is here for Trinity. If you don't mind just coming up. This is actually for a tent. For Night in Bethlehem in the small Seminole parking lot.
Yes.
Right, correct?
Yes.
Can you just tell us real quickly, do you know size of tent?
Yes.
And when the tent is going to be erected?
Sure.
Okay.
So the size of the tent is 40 feet by 100 feet.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, we've used this kind of tent before as a church for a different event. And so the tent will be delivered actually that Thursday before, which I believe is the 3rd.
Yeah.
So it will be up from the 3rd until they come take it down on Monday morning, the 7th.
Okay.
So our event is actually the 5th and the 6th. And in the event of rain, our rain dates will be the following weekend on the Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
Yes.
3rd through the 7th. And this is the same size tent, basically the same exact tent as what we've approved in the past for the Element Discovery Weekend.
Yes.
In that same parking lot, actually.
Yes.
And this won't affect traffic. Typically, for our Discovery, we close the
No.
street.
Well, and we
Y'all
have
are
another
closing?
request in to close that piece of Seminole between Manhattan and Oxmoor.
Okay, for the police
where We've
department.
already dropped off our application
Okay,
for that.
awesome. Okay. All right, so do I have a motion in regards to allowing Trinity to put a tent on the parking lot at Seminole?
I will move to approve. I just want to clarify, Mr. Kendrick, do we include in that motion what their backup rain dates are, just to make sure they're covered?
Okay.
Okay,
All
then I move to approve both sets of dates then.
Okay.
Great.
All right,
Second.
motion for Ms. Andrus, second for Mr. Almon. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, I think. I don't know, I couldn't hear. 5-0 to approve the tent, so you are good to go.
Great, thank you so
All
much.
right, you're
Hey,
welcome.
Ms. Smith, can we back up and do the minutes?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, I skipped right over that. You're good.
Okay,
You're all
thank
set. I'm sorry. Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading and approval of the minutes as presented?
Move to approve.
Motion for Ms. Andrus,
Second.
second for Mr. Almon. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 5-0 to approve the minutes. Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Salter, for reminding me. Okay, and then I'm going to jump to
I think they're here tonight.
the parking pad. Okay. All right, so 01-11-20, request for permission to install a parking pad in the city right-of-way at 300 Yorkshire Drive, Bruce McLeod, and Wyatt Pugh. Are they here? Is that him?
She said they were coming.
Are they here? Not here?
Bruce is here.
It's Militia Durkee.
Okay, here we go. All right.
Sorry, I didn't know we were on our case.
All right, no, that's okay. Come on up.
I'm Bruce McLeod, representing the Durkees. They live at 300 Yorkshire Drive and would like to add some parking. The sort of the flagstone grass in between is what they want as the material there, right there. It's 100 feet from Yorkshire back to that first parking space. I don't know if you have these in front of you.
We do not. I don't believe we've received those. No, that's okay. Yeah. Do you need us to share?
Share.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that okay? Sorry, y'all. I thought y'all knew like this because it was in the email. Who else?
Just in case.
So this is, we're talking about the spaces are actually the house is a house.
I've got pictures of the road. There's 6. This is kind of from Hampton looking back up toward, it's going uphill from Yorkshire going back up the hill there.
If I give you my email, could you email me one for the record after we, okay?
Yeah, I sent it to Wyatt and Gary. They
It doesn't have to be as much milk as salt, but it'll run on that one. Mr. Kennedy, you want for the resolution?
Okay, Melody, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't have enough copies. I was assuming you guys already had that.
Yep. Oh. Huh?
I can forward it to him as soon as he sends an email. I'll send it to Judy Tripp.
We don't make payments. That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's on the hand. It's right here.
Yes,
There's something else maybe it's right away.
the house foot, that's right.
That's nice.
Yeah, so that Blind Hill sign will have to be moved either up or over. I know, I think you always want signs
That's
on
the
the
new.
right side of the road. Yeah. There's a Blind Hill sign kind of right in the middle of the section where you're talking about putting the parking pad.
It's, I think it's beyond,
Okay, so it's actually, so it will not be disturbed in
Correct, no.
it will stay where it is? Okay.
That's
Okay.
right.
I'm sorry. I figured it was kind of right in the smack middle of it. Huh?
So is it where the tree is?
I'm not sure it's on.
yes, the little bitty dogwood.
He had a question on what
Yeah.
point stuff.
Is it this or is it this? What are we doing?
These are the three spots.
Okay.
I wanted to do, so.
What's that?
Because that is super scary, like Yorkshire's very good and Hampton is very good. Email she sent me today. No, I understand, I told her.
And do they have a lot of cars in their family? Is that why we're trying to get cars off the street? Is that the goal here?
Yes, they've got grown children that are coming, and the other thing that we've got is that it's a 2-wide driveway right now that we really would like to narrow. We'd like to remove some of that concrete. And it's, the backyard has a magnificent oak tree, and we'd love to kind of just make sure that it stays healthy, and we'd like to lessen the concrete in that existing drive and kind of give it more space.
Okay, so the existing driveway would become less wide, and then
That's-
basically the parking pad would take the place of, essentially, would kind of allow the parking that was previously on the driveway.
That's right.
Okay, gotcha. So that- I assume it's just gonna be grass?
Yes, will be landscaped,
Landscape, yeah.
right?
Okay.
Your mic's off, Barry.
Sorry, Brian. I'm just all flutter today. Okay, does anybody else have additional questions about this?
I'm just like, excuse my ignorance, but like, if it's in the right of way, is the city then responsible for maintaining it?
No, so they sign an indemnification, if we approve this, they sign an indemnification agreement, which they assume maintenance of it, but they also know that if the city ever should come in and say, hey, we want to put sidewalks up that street, which we would never do because it's incredibly steep, but we could. So we would be able to take it right back if that was, because
Okay,
it's
thank
still
you.
our property, yeah. So no, we assume no maintenance or liability over it.
Are there any safety-related issues if it's really steep, pulling in and out there? And the other question that I have is, when you ask the city for use of a right-of-way, are there supposed to be some sort of hardships or anything like that that would?
Typically, sorry, gosh, now I feel like I'm screaming. Typically, we do ask a hardship, and essentially what they're saying is they're going to actually make their driveway smaller in order to add more grass back and landscaping, so that basically they'll be taking some of the parking that wouldn't have been in the driveway and putting it on the parking pads. And I would say, I mean, the good thing about having a parking pad is taking cars off that very thin,
It
very
is
steep street.
very narrow and thin and hilly and blind, and that is a scary, in fact, I have residents on Hampton who have asked me to reopen looking at making Hampton one-way, because like we've done with Rumson. So
Right.
just, it is one of the most narrow, windy, it's the part where you can't see the bottom when your car is going up over the hill. And that's on Hampton, where they're talking about adding the parking pad. Yorkshire is also very narrow and gets a lot of traffic, a lot of cut-through traffic on Yorkshire, because they're coming off of Rumson, getting through the neighborhoods.
And actually, I would assume, just from looking at it, it would probably be safer to be pulling off a parking pad into the street as opposed to backing out of that driveway and hoping that no one is coming over that hill at you.
Further away from the hill, right, that's
Yeah.
right, is better.
Yeah.
So being down further away
Sight
from
lines
it,
would be a little bit,
it is better.
And
That's
she
right.
did mention, we talked over email today, and she mentioned having two situations where trucks had to slam on their brakes in that exact scenario. John, you want to add any thoughts on that property?
Now, they're on the corner there. Hampton is a hill as it goes up right there. But I don't, especially they're kind of give and take a little bit, so I don't see a problem with it.
And they have they are surrounded by houses and small kids, and so they don't want to park on the street to create more sight distance for the kids playing.
Yeah, but the kids, one of them's in Seattle, so it's a long way to drive down here.
No, I'm talking about the Weirens that live next door, and then the family that's next door to them, and, so.
if there are no other questions, is there a motion
So
from
moved.
someone on the committee?
Second.
Oh, who made the motion? I'm sorry.
Almond.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't hear you over there. Okay, motion from Mr. Almond to approve, second by Mrs. Andrus. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All, are there any opposed? No? Okay, so that is 5-0. And that motion includes the proper indemnification agreements that we will need y'all to sign for the
Okay.
city.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay.
And sir, if you'll just email me that later, tomorrow or something, I can,
Trying to do that,
because they'll have to vote on it at their next meeting on the 30th.
Yes, in
and
council.
We'll have to put it overhead.
On the 30th.
I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, I'm going back up to the top, and hopefully, we're about to have a presentation. Okay, 171015, request for consideration of noise and odor problems from Buffalo Rock and Mayfield Barbers, West Homewood area residents. And I have been promising y'all, an appearance by Mr. Ron Thompson, who is our consultant, and the man is here. So he is going to give us a presentation about some of the data that they have put together in terms of complaints and situations, and I will let him give you all the details.
Thank you. Yes, we've really looked at the situation there, really at Buffalo Rock and Barbers. We've looked at all the complaints, and really the issue has been going on for a very long time. There's a number of studies that's been done, so there's a lot of data out there indicating that there's clearly a odor problem associated with the site. And we've looked at wind directions where we think the odors are coming from, and we've done a number of site visits just to verify that the issue is still happening today. And really what we see is there are issues that related to the wastewater treatment. There's issues related to the treatment facility itself as far as potential sources of where the odors could be coming from. The next step really is to look at some detailed wastewater analysis. And when we started the project, we looked at various approaches to do that wastewater sampling. Jefferson County has indicated that they're going to go ahead and collect those samples. That detailed wastewater analysis will tell us constituents in the wastewater that contribute by both the industries. And those constituents will let us really determine exactly where the odor is coming from. At this point, you've got potentially at least two sources, and there's been a number of changes with both of those facilities. If you look at the Barber's Dairy facility, it's changed ownership several times. They've gone through a number of changes there, so we've got different operators running the wastewater treatment plant. And if we look at the Buffalo Rock facility, they've gone through a number of attempts to address the problem. They dealt with carbon filters, they modified their wastewater treatment plant, but still, the issue exists. And, it exists really, I think, because, really there's been no detailed analysis of the wastewater and really identifying the specific source. And there's, obviously wastewater treatment technologies that would allow us to manage that problem out there. There are also a number of things I think that Homewood could do in terms of just managing complaints. We do have a history of complaints, and we've compiled all those complaints and looked at, where they're concentrated. And we've also gone back to the Alabama Department of Environmental Management website and talked with them about the number of complaints they have seen. And there's really not as many complaints that are making it to the regulatory agency as makes it to the city. So one of the things that we would look at is some standard process to be able to collect all that data and be sure that it gets to the regulatory agency so it's documented as a complaint. At this point, we have a lot more of those complaints than are posted to the website, and they have a standard form, that is available at their website that can be filled out for each complaint. So whether those are collected by the city of Homewood or the individual residents really kind of is a decision that needs to be made. And there's a lot of options in terms of things that could be done to the Homewood website in terms of having a complaint tab that people could go to and would take them directly to the Alabama Department of Environmental complaint. Once that's logged, then they have to take some kind of action to address those complaints that are logged into the system. The other thing that we looked at is the potential even of a web app that would make it easier for the residents to actually respond. When we look at all the responses that have been out there, everyone collects different data. So there's really not a consistent set of data that documents the address, the exact time of day, and what's going on there. And if we make that standard, I think it'll be easier to get a response from the regulatory agencies, to address the problem and begin to put additional pressure on the industries to modify their waste treatment process. One thing that is happening that I think is an opportunity for Homewood is the current SID permit, which allows Buffalo Rock to discharge into the Jefferson County sewer. It expires in November of next year, but they have a requirement 6 months before that to submit their permit application. And that application has to go through a public comment. There's an opportunity for everyone to respond to those comments. And I think it's important as that process starts that we do have all the detailed wastewater analysis information. We're able to respond to the comment period with specific comments about what we think would improve the situation. So that's kind of an overview. Be glad to take any questions and talk about any specific data we've collected.
Yes. Can I ask a few? I guess first off, where exactly would you do the wastewater collection?
Yeah, the best option in terms of wastewater collection is as near to the source as we can get.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be on site if we can collect water as it's discharged from the site.
Sure.
So, we would want to be able to isolate the individual contributors. If there's contributions from the Barber's Dairy, contributions from Buffalo Rock, we want to be sure we separate that so we can identify the specific constituents. We know in both cases there's very high BOD, very high biological oxygen demand.
Sure.
That has the potential of creating the odor. So we want to try to separate those two wastes, and then also look a little bit at the temperature of that waste as it leaves the facility.
Sure.
They do report to the regulatory agency.
Right.
The numbers that they report have been, very high BOD numbers, but their existing permit really does not have a limit for the biological oxygen demand that they can discharge. And that's, it's going to the Jefferson County treatment plant, so it's ultimately going to get treated. But the higher that biological oxygen demand, the more potential you have for odor generation once it gets into the sanitary sewer.
Sure. And this is just a question because I really don't have a clue. If they are aware that samples are being taken at a certain time, are they able to alter what they are discharging?
That is a possibility, and one reason you'd want to take samples over a continuous basis, for a period of time to establish that that's normal operating conditions. The other thing is to actually, conduct some site visits, collect water directly from their wastewater treatment facility. And, I think the approach of continuous sampling over a period of time, if they have to keep production going, they can't modify their operations for an extended period of time and still meet production levels they have to meet.
Yeah, I would say historically, I feel like there has been less than warm welcome to on-site visits, especially with short notice.
Yes.
For what it's worth.
And there are some access points that are, once you get into the Jefferson County systems, that would allow us to collect some of that data. And if you look at the history of the complaints and the history of actions, I mean, if you look at things they have, added carbon to their treatment plant to help reduce the odor problem, but then they don't run it continuously.
Well, and then they also claimed at one point that they were told by somebody to take the carbon out, so they took the carbon out for 6 months, and we had a string of complaints.
Yeah.
I guess following up on that, where have you sourced your complaint records? Because to your point, I agree. I don't think there's been a great collaborative, collection point for all of those complaints.
Andrew,
Yeah.
can I just,
Yes.
I'll help Ron out on this one. You're correct, because as we all know, those complaints come to me, those complaints go to JJ sometimes, those complaints go to Eric Henniger was doing a thing at some point. So really, I gave Ron the spreadsheet of every single, because I have every single email I've ever received in text. So I sent him a spreadsheet with every single one that I'd ever received starting in 2015.
Well, sure.
And, well, actually, it was more like 2016 because it was after Fred left. And then we had Eric Henniger's data from his polls that he was doing on Facebook. And
Yeah, I mean, the Facebook page is a good source of information. It
Yeah.
seems like people do log in, and to me, that's instantaneous, too. It gives you an indication of when you need to go out and check something. So
Right.
we've looked at that.
So it's kind of an amalgamation of several different sources, but that's why we'd like to have something.
I would love to
on the
streamline that,
website,
for
yeah,
sure.
because that way we have a way to track and respond and keep
Yeah.
track of dates and times, and, because it's hard for me, like today, I started getting, well, actually yesterday, and then I got an email or text from our friends at Buffalo Rock today that they were having some issues.
Well,
So,
and that's
yeah.
that's kind of my point too.
Yeah.
Every time there has been a report of work being done,
Mhm.
it's consistent with a particular
Yeah.
location. So
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But I think it would be great if we could find a way
yeah.
to streamline that data collection.
And we're working on it. That's
Yeah.
definitely part of the new plan for the website, is that there will be a citizen portal for them to come in and make complaints, not just about this, but, speeding.
And to your point
construction,
too, if
whatever.
there's a better way to get some sort of pressure and recognition of the problem,
Yeah.
Right.
whether that's linking directly to ADEM or, wherever else you're referencing.
Yeah, I think
that'd
that's
be
a
great.
good point, is linking it to the ADM side. I mean, they have a automatic numbering system. They number all the complaints that come in, so it's a matter of, if we asked all the residents to do that, then everybody has to link to that website. It comes up with a standard form to fill out, so that would be quick. But the other alternative of going to the website for the city allows a chance to compile those, be sure they're all consistent, and then get all those posted at one time. So, there's pros and cons for each one of those approaches, but I think one of them, to get more information out there to the regulatory agencies, that this is actually a problem, and it's a persistent problem, And, these incremental fixes have done nothing to resolve the long-term problem.
If it were to be routed to a link from the city website, is there a way that we could collaboratively get data from, that report?
We'll have to talk
basically be both
we'll have to talk to
places?
the technology brains around here to figure out a way to capture that data at our point before it goes somewhere else.
Mr. Chairwoman?
But that's way
I mean,
beyond
our
my
part might be a little bit
technological
less detailed on our side, and then it could link to a
Right.
specific time and date that a ADEM complaint was filed or something.
Well, the bulk of the conversation had to do with the smell, but another set of complaints has to do with noise. And I was just wondering if we're doing anything to address that aspect of it?
I have not specifically looked at noise. I have had some complaints, that come that we've noticed. But I've really focused on trying to deal with the regulatory issue associated with the, with the wastewater odor issue. The noise issue, again, would go back to some, what nuisance ordinances are in place. Again, we can track those, and we can build a case that demonstrates that it is a recurring problem, and then be able to, apply more pressure to get that resolved. I think as you have a bunch of different people complaining and no consistent pressure to address the problem, it tends to drop off, and then it reoccurs again, sometimes a month later, or, really, the records in terms of some of the events at the site really go all the way back to, 2012 or 2013. So, there's been a number of issues through the years that, have been documented as problems, but just not consistently followed to the solution and resolving those problems.
And Carlos, to your point, at some point we did have several meetings with them about, because at one point there was lighting problems because there were bright lights basically shining into people's houses. And then also noise problems, mostly with the large trucks backing up early in the morning and with the beep, beep, beeps and other things.
And guys yelling and shouting at each other.
Most recently, it's been the guys shouting, and it's been shift change issues. I have videos from people's Ring doorbells and people's phones, on my phone as well, documenting the noise. And I think that's something that we need to address with them, because they went through a period where they fixed it.
Right.
For a pretty good span of time, that they kind of had corrected things, and then as like Ron said, it kind of starts to drop off and get worse again.
Sure.
Ron, you mentioned about their permitting process going to be starting for in 21.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, they don't have any regulations as to how much BOD they can release.
Right.
Yeah, so is that something that could happen, or is that strictly
It's
up to Jeffco to decide?
I think it would require some discussions with Jeffco to demonstrate that it creates a nuisance. Under the, the Alabama regs, there is a requirement that they do not create a nuisance from odors or other activities. And I think the period that they have to submit by, based on their permit expiration, they have to have all their permit information in no later than June the 4th.
Okay.
So more than likely, they're beginning to work on that now. And, to me, being able to, document responses and complaints when we start the public hearing process, and, deal with noise and odors at the same time, would have more force, if we could put that together. And then again, if we respond to public notice, they have to go through and address each one of those complaints that come in as part of that public notice. I think the other thing is just continuing to, as soon as we get any data from Jefferson County, really looking at what the results indicate, and what are the options. If we look at the initial design approach for the treatment plant that Buffalo Rock has, the initial design indicated it would provide better treatment than they're actually providing. So there is technology available, and there's no reason they shouldn't implement those technologies that can reduce that.
Well, also, I believe from what we understand, based on the person who designed the treatment center to begin with, it was never meant to deal with the capacity that they're currently dealing with.
Right.
To a large degree, not prepared to deal with that capacity. So that's also a problem. But, well, we thank you for all of your work and for staying on top of this. And we just need to continue, like you said, especially knowing that this permitting process is on the horizon.
Right, it's the opportunity to put it in public eye and to give public an opportunity to consolidate their comments, their discussion, and then if we want to, see more stringent permit requirements, the more pressure they get, the easier it'll be to develop, those more stringent requirements.
Okay, good to know. All right.
Being new to this process, I just wanted to understand again who you work for and your relationship with the city.
Right, I work for Wagner engineering company. We have an office out in Perimeter Park. And we started the contract with the city, this year to be able to look at this problem, collect information on that. So I work for a consulting engineering firm, and, we do a lot of work with water, wastewater design, permitting.
Okay,
and
so
really-
we have a contract very specifically
He's our
about the.
consultant. Yeah, we do.
To give
Yeah.
you a quick summary, we've had 2 different consultants prior. Yes, this is the third.
Yes.
A large, I would say, problem with the previous ones, but, just by default, was that there were some proximity issues with some of the other consultants, so.
Our first consultant was from Huntsville, and our second consultant.
North Carolina or South
is-
Carolina?
Yeah, and he's retired now and has had some health issues.
So
Okay. Okay,
this
awesome.
offers us a lot more,
He's still there, he's
Awesome.
very knowledgeable.
this offers us a lot more real-time feedback
Awesome.
and
Okay, that's great.
monitoring.
Do we have as much of vegetation buffer as we can possibly have between these places and the neighborhood? There's nothing else to do.
Vegetation's not the problem,
Right,
because they used up way high and they,
Okay.
so, doesn't matter how tall your trees are, because it's not going to help. But
Okay.
yes, there is a vegetation buffer. There's lots of things that have been done, but.
okay.
But how about for the noise, a buffer for the noise?
The noise, they did put up, at some point, they did put up, what do you call that stuff?
Well, they ripped out a bunch of stuff and then.
air conditioner and they built a barrier.
Built a barrier, and then they also put, what are those, on their fencing, they put things on their fencing to block light and sound.
Long story, in other words.
Yeah, it's a very, yes, 2015, long story.
5 years.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a 5-year long story that continues.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ron.
Okay,
We
you're welcome.
appreciate your work.
Work, we so appreciate your help, and
Well,
we'll,
where is the county?
We're still waiting on that sample activity.
We met with them in March, April, May, and they want to start that one. We need to meet with them again.
Yeah, probably do need to meet
Because
with them.
they were supposed to be through with this thing.
Right, and I've, made, numerous contacts and, still, they haven't provided the information. I know they have their own consultant developing the sampling plan.
You should
And,
develop
Oh,
a
yeah.
city plan.
right, so, I will continue to, I'll go by and meet with them again. David Denard.
yeah, should we maybe try to set up a meeting?
I think it would be worthwhile
I
to
think
do
so
that.
too.
Let's let this right on,
Yeah.
Well, I will say the county was on all non-emergency was not, during COVID. They shut
Right.
everything down except for emergency only from March to August, so.
Right, and most of the discussions we've had, all the discussions we have with the county would either be a team video or a phone call. We haven't really had any meetings in
Right.
person.
Yeah, right, yeah. All right, well, maybe we'll get that set up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
hanging around for us.
No problem.
Thanks, Ron. Okay, I believe, well, 170220, request to address trash pickup concerns and requirements for downtown business properties, Tim Hansis. Mr. Wright? Hey, Berkeley, do we have anything on this, or are we still waiting? Hey, Berkeley? Berkeley?
Oh, yeah.
Trash, are we anywhere on that, or do I need to carry that over?
Please carry one more.
Okay.
One more week.
All right, carry that over. 030620, request permission to place tables on the city sidewalk at 2801 18th Street South for the Maple Street Biscuit Company, Chris Sears, Greg Cobb. We're still waiting to accept that partial work on the curb, and I know that it's still, I saw cones out there the other day, so it's still,
Watt says they'll be through by the end of the year, right?
yeah, I think that's right. I think he said by the end of December, right? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so we know that they're probably, and I think, John, were you going to tell them that maybe that was the case, timeline-wise? The Maple Street Biscuit people, if you could tell them that that work should be completed by end of December.
Okay. I mean, I think by then.
It won't matter, because it'll be so cold.
Really?
And I will say,
And I think because of COVID, they've been trying, people want to be outside.
yeah.
And so they really missed that window.
Yeah, well, maybe we can get it for them for spring. Yeah, and I will say, there are lines out the door every single time I drive by there on a Saturday morning, so
Okay.
they're still getting their people in somehow. Okay, 170920, request for consideration to vacate the alley adjacent to 329 Starrett Avenue, Michael Thomas and Greg Cobb.
I still don't have a legal description, nor the declaration of vacation.
Huh? This is the alley over on Starrett.
Oh, Thomason?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not responding to us, so
Oh.
we're still waiting.
He had emailed me some that I hadn't gotten
I think we're
back
on
in a while.
What he emailed you was a legal description.
You think we should table it, Walter?
I mean, if he's not gonna respond,
Yeah.
there's no reason to take it up every time.
All right, anybody want to make a motion to table that?
You want to reach out, when we reach out to him one more time, and carry it over, or you want to drop it?
I'll text him right
Not
now.
drop it. I think we'll table it, just so we don't have to talk about it every single time.
I'll email him.
Okay, all right, well, we'll carry it over and let Miss Melody see if she can get in touch with him. 231020, request for presentation, oh, we already did that. Did we decide we just want to carry over via, John? We want to just carry over via until we, or what do you
Yeah, I
want
mean,
to
I
do?
think we've got to look at, if we go do the, at some point, we're going to have to fund it.
Yeah,
And so,
that is true.
We might talk them into giving us a 6-month
Trial.
pilot, as
Yeah.
they call it. As much struggle as we've had with our other friends, it seemed like a great alternative of people who, they're a for-profit group, but
Yeah.
a group that seems to be pretty focused on doing the job at hand.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the difference between them and what we've got with the Birmingham transit folks, but, that I think that we'll find them to be, I think of the woman that was having such struggles getting to work.
Yeah,
And having to stand there for 2 hours waiting for the bus that never came.
yeah.
I mean, that kind of stuff, you get fired from jobs for that.
Yes, you
And
do.
to have something like this available that's so reliable, I just, we spend $300,000, I think, or something.
Well, this year we got a 30% discount, so I think we're at 230,000, somewhere
Yeah,
around there.
So I don't know whether, even let's pretend that somehow we did it and it was an even swap. Are they giving us the same level of service coverage in the same area? I don't know.
Yeah,
But it'd be nice to continue to see if that thing is real, because if
Okay.
it is.
Mr. Harden, there are some issues, legal issues, that need to be addressed. The Transit Authority is delegated specific statutory authority by the legislature. They're not a public for-profit corporation. They're mass transit identified by the state versus a private corporation that would essentially have a franchise for the use of the public streets for their private gain. So there are some technical issues that we can certainly address if and when you get to that point.
Yeah, I talked to someone in West Sacramento, and a city councilor in West Sacramento, and they loved it. They only had great things to say about it.
Idea.
Yeah.
all right, well, do we want to table it and just keep it on the agenda and bring it
Yeah.
up if
I'm
need
not
to?
sure what their timing is versus our timing. They've got to obviously be set up, and clearly, Mr. Hendrick says, what he says is, could be an issue too. Obviously, the city of Birmingham somehow got
That
it.
can be addressed, it just, there
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
issues.
Well, and also for our purposes, I'm not sure that this is something we're going to fund in 2021.
No, and are we forced to continue to fund our other folks? Do we have to do a deal with them? I mean, it took everything we had to get them to show up at the table with a document.
By the state code, you have to tell them in March what service you want for the next year.
Yeah, that's the rule. In March, we would have to say yay or nay. So we could table this and try to do some investigation and see if it's possible. I mean, it would, yeah, we'd have to do some real intensive work here in a short amount of time, but it's possible. Because we do, by law, we have to tell them in March
okay?
whether we're gonna do service or not.
I almost wouldn't send it to the table then, it's
Keep-
really,
just keep it on the
at that
agenda.
point, if you're gonna start looking into it now to make a presentation, for us to make a decision by March, I wouldn't send it to the table at that point, right?
Yeah,
You want to just carry it over?
yeah, we can just carry it over.
I think when we look at what it is number one, will the community foundation do the pilot program with us? That's a question, I think, that's still
Right.
out there. And number two, let's pretend they did the pilot program and it didn't work
Yeah,
for whatever reason, then what are we stuck with?
Right.
Okay, we turned them down in March and pilot program didn't work, and so there's a bunch of moving pieces there
Yeah.
that we've got to timing-wise figure out, but,
and also, I think I'm right, I think our budget years are different, isn't that right? Isn't the BJCTA's budget
they're-
the same as City of Birmingham? So their budget ends and begins in July,
July
June
1.
and July? I
Yeah,
think that's
July.
right.
I think that's correct.
Yeah,
it is.
and our budget year's September 30th,
Right.
October 1st, so that also is a little bit of a workaround. But again, it's not impossible, it's just, it's gonna take some,
why don't I do this? I'll call Chris Nani and just
Okay.
have a conversation with him to kind of get a feel for his vision.
Mhm.
He lives in Homewood.
Yep.
And I think he brought this to us because he felt like Homewood is right next to Birmingham and could benefit from it. So let me have a conversation. with
okay,
him.
that sounds good. All right, well, we'll carry it over and then we'll continue to discuss that and you can let us
And
know what you
real-
find out from Chris.
Real quick about that.
Yeah.
One thing that I heard him say in the presentation is, the first step is just figuring out what problem we're trying to solve transportation-wise in Homewood. And I think that's an interesting discussion to have. I know that some people were taken by surprise when the bus routes changed and they've had trouble. That's just one example, but, we have senior centers, colleges, all sorts of entities that might potentially partner with the city on something like that, or, I don't really know, but it seems like the first step is thinking about how it might be used.
Yeah.
And it's real interesting service.
Yeah.
If you can go between Homewood and Birmingham, that's.
And that part was a little confusing to me because there was some talk about crossing into different municipalities
And
and how that works, yeah.
Well, I think we would have the capacity to basically set up the service as we wanted to. It could be citywide, or it could be, certain spokes, like we were talking about down
Yeah.
65 or down Lakeshore. But to Melanie's point, I think the next step would be some type of survey of the conditions and also, constituent feedback about what the needs are and how they would use it and what that, if we would need to look citywide or basically pilot some certain corridors.
Yeah, yeah.
And also maybe even get county support, because if we're going to talk about Homewood and Birmingham and other surrounding areas, the county should also be involved.
Yeah, and I think from our perspective, that's their bailiwick and not ours. Ours is just,
Yeah.
do we want to do it in Homewood?
Homewood.
And I'm a little concerned that if we tell them no in March, that we're not going to have all our ducks in a row, especially if we're trying to figure out what we need. And my gut is, they're doing this all over the world. And so they probably have a pretty good feel of what needs they might fulfill for us more than we probably know.
Yeah.
They could probably tell us, hey, here's what we typically see in a city of your size,
Well, and honestly, the pilot area that they're doing in downtown Birmingham is essentially the size of Homewood, because he said 7 square miles is their pilot program, and we're 8 square miles. So essentially, it's the same basic area. So, but they have different places that they're,
And
hot spots they're going to.
We've been handing them $300,000, 230 this year, and the service has been awful. And so we're paying for something we're forced to pay for because we don't have any other options. I kept saying, God, we could buy a van and hire someone and do a better job than this.
Yeah, but then the state legislature would
Well, I do think
not smile on you.
it becomes a complementary system, though. We still use BJCTA in some capacity for fixed routes, but it's that last mile maybe where VIA helps out, or just where people can circumvent having to go to the, downtown facility to, get on their other line. We can kind of, they can use that as to get to their hub, and then they can jump on the route they need to.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things we would want to really understand is what's it going to cost the city?
Yeah.
And I don't know how easy they can figure that out. But let me have some conversation with Chris and see what he thinks.
Okay, sounds good.
You know, we don't have anything in our budget that's next year.
No, it's not, yeah, it's not
Not
gonna be
happening.
funded in 2021, so there's that. Okay, all right, well, we will adjourn then. Oh, yes. Yes, sorry. Thank you, Nick, for reminding me in my brain. You want to give your brief update from the command meeting this morning?
So we have a weekly conference call with the Unified Command for Jefferson County for COVID-19, and Dr. Wilson and Jim Coker and Homewood's own Jim Coker, they are the co-chairs of the Unified Command. Today, Counselor Sims asked me to give an update just based on the fact that nationwide numbers are surging, and I will give a direct quote from Dr. Wilson. We're not in a good place, and there's, quote, tons of disease out there. So we are not looking at shutdowns, but staying in touch with the state, and we need more cooperation from our citizenry to wear masks and social distance. On Thursday, we had 450 cases uploaded in Jefferson County and 254 in the hospital, and we had 8 deaths in one day on Sunday, which is the most deaths we've had so far in one day. Let's see. The concern right now, the immediate concern is headed into Thanksgiving, and the advice is to have Thanksgiving with the people that you live with and celebrate with them. And not gather in larger groups. If you do have food needs, you could call 211 for any food needs, that there has been an uptick in that need. We are good on PPE except for gloves, but there's no concern about face masks or other PPE at all. And we have a site here in Homewood that will be opening up for specifically for the Hispanic community. It will be on Saturday at La Casita. And get your flu shot. So that is the update from the Unified Command.
Okay, and Dr. Heath is on Zoom.
That was my understanding, if Brian could check.
Brian, do you see Dr. Heath on Zoom?
I see a Sonia Heath, if that's who you mean.
Yes, that is she. Dr. Heath, can you turn her on, Brian? Yeah, there she is.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to talk. I just want to echo some of the comments that were made. At the hospital, things are definitely ramping up. We are now at the highest percent positivity that we have been in since the beginning of the epidemic. In Jefferson County, we are at 19.6% positivity. You may remember at the beginning of the school year, we were kind of debating whether or not we should come back virtual or hybrid when we were at around 7%. So the fact that we are so far above a 5% recommendation from CDC for reopening a lot of things, tells us how bad things are. As was stated, we've had recent days where we've had up to 300 new cases a day in Jefferson County, and somewhere between 7 or 8 deaths in Jefferson County over the past week. There's evidence through the CDC that places that we are seeing the most outbreaks are places where, not surprisingly, you are not able to wear your mask indoors. These are places like restaurants and gyms where we typically see large outbreaks. The CDC has stated that these 2 locations are amongst the highest outbreaks, since the fall started. And as we go into the winter months, we anticipate that will continue. This is less a virus that transmits through surfaces and much more a virus that transmits through respiratory droplets when you are in close contact with other people. So restaurants, bars, gyms where people are taking their masks off continue to be places where we will expect to see transmission. The hospital continues to have an uptick in cases. We have added a number of ICUs specifically for COVID patients, and despite this, we are still at about less than 6% capacity in our ICUs. We have a contingency plan at UAB that if we don't have enough room for patients, we may need to ship patients who have less significant diseases, let's say, a heart attack or a gallbladder removal, to other hospitals where they can be cared for in other hospitals, like a remote rural hospital in Alabama, as opposed to staying at UAB where maybe we need to, see more patients that have more critical illness. So I just encourage people, this is not an unlimited resource. We don't have unlimited resources at UAB. When we have these large numbers of people who are infected, there will be significant numbers who will have high severity disease. About 20% of people who develop COVID have severe or critical illness requiring hospitalization, and that is not an unlimited resource. We continue to have significant number of children, particularly out of our high school. I would estimate that at times it's up to 18 to 20% of kids that have been absent in the last 3 weeks, not only because of quarantining, but a number of people just aren't sending their kids because they don't feel safe there at the school. And so, as we think about going into, this winter season, I just really encourage the city of Homewood to think about different things that you as a city, our city council are endorsing and supporting. I think the parade is.
Dr. Heath, I'm sorry, we're going to have to, we need you to wrap it up. We need to have another meeting coming up, so I just need you to wrap up your comments, please.
Sure.
Sorry. And I have a question as well.
Anything where we are having large gatherings endorsed by the city, we need to think about the risk to people in those situations. And I'll just end there. Thank you for your time.
Dr. Heath, we appreciate you participating. We do. And we are, there's going to be some changes to the parade, so everybody needs to understand that. All right, and with that, we are adjourned.